Hey, hello and welcome to our presentation on the analysis of world happiness by team members Aastha, Marina, Janna, Mubai, and Jesus. With a number of changes, both positive and negative, the happiness of countries and continents is constantly changing. In order to understand which factors have a greater impact, we chose to visualize data related to this topic.
Our hypothesis was that these factors would influence happiness, such as social support, GDP, freedom, corruption, and more.
So we used three separate data sets, the World Happiness Report from 2008 to 2020, the 2021 Happiness Index, and populations from 2020, and imported the required packages.
We did some data cleaning. We converted 10 unique regional indicators into 6 continents because dividing regions too finely is unnecessary. We dropped extra columns that contained explained by information. We renamed several columns so that the column names were more clear to read, such as happy score was replaced with, happy score replaced ladder score, continents replaced regional indicator. We added missing information in column continents by creating Oceania and classified Australia and New Zealand. In the code below, we dropped some columns, changed the unique regions to continents, assigned some countries to their continents, and we have 9 data columns. We have a country name. This conveys the name of each of the countries in the data frame. Continents, that's the 6 continents over the world. The happiness index of the country, which is named Happy Score, log GPD per capita of the country. Social support was the social support index of the country. Healthy life expectancy the calculation of support person versus in the country. Freedom versus freedom index of the country. Generosity, the generosity index of the countries. And the index to measure, perceptions of corruption is the index to measure the perception of corruption in a country.
So moving on to our analysis, the world map shows a difference in happiness index by country, which is indicated by the colors on the map. So for example, darker colors indicate a lower happiness score, while lighter colors show a higher happiness score. You can also scroll through this map and hover over it. So moving on to our next visual, the following heat map aims to convey which columns different factors have a stronger correlation to the column named happy score in our data set. Similar to the world map, darker colors show a higher correlation and lighter colors show a lower correlation. Moving on, we also developed a scatter plot to visualize the trend and correlation of GDP and happy score. We can see countries like Afghanistan appear lower on the plot due to recent terrorist activities which take place in the country, which restricts freedom and happiness. So in order to calculate the average happiness score for each continent, we made use of the group by method, which helped us group by continent and then perform the mean. A number of things could explain this graph. So for example, North America is more advanced, more resources, more life expectancy, therefore more happiness, whereas Africa has unfortunately lower modern resources, therefore lower GDP, which could affect happiness again.
This is a graph between social support and happiness, and we can see there's a positive correlation along with how the different continents are grouped. Next, this graph shows the effects of life expectancy and happiness. And we can see how different continents are also grouped with a positive correlation. This can be due to healthcare and other factors. Our box plot shows how different continents have less info. So North America and Oceania are slightly skewed because they only have 3 countries in each compared to the other continents. Next, this graph is a relationship between freedom of life choices and perception of corruption. And some outliers are Singapore and Afghanistan. And these could be due to the controls of government and different political events.
So next we went to population and imported that data frame. So for our next scatter plot, we see the relationship between population and the happiness score. So we can see near the bottom, there are the countries, like many African countries, with a lower happiness score. And there seems to be no clear relationship yet. For this next graph, we see the relationship between population, corruption, and the size of the dot indicates their happiness score. So we can see a big cluster around a 0.8 perception of corruption. And this plot shows population versus the life expectancy. And again, the size of the dot indicates the happiness. So we can see that the lower life expectancy, generally there's lower happiness as well with the smaller dots. And this 3D plot shows the GDP, life expectancy, and happiness score. So we can see a positive relationship between these factors. So higher GDP, higher life expectancy indicates a higher happiness score.
So now we're at the happiness score over the years. And here we have a line graph of the global happiness score over the years. And as we can see, there was a significant decline in 2006 due to the Great Recession. And as the economy gradually recovers after 2009, the global happiness score stabilized and started to increase in 2019. And next we have happiness score over the year for each continent. And all continents' happiness score have different trends, except a common decrease during the Great Recession from 2006 to 2009. And also in 2019, most continents' happiness score started to increase. Only South America had a significant decline in happiness score. And next we have a line graph of top 2 countries from each continent. And they still have different trends of happiness scores, except the year of 2019 when the COVID breakout, most top countries' happiness score decreased or didn't increase a lot. And that's different from the general trend because most of these top countries were impacted by global pandemic significantly. And then we have the GDP over years in those top 2 countries. And besides the GDP and years, the happiness score was also labeled on each dot so we can figure out the relationship between GDP and the happiness score. For instance, there's a positive correlation between China's happiness score and GDP, but there's a negative correlation between India's happiness score and GDP.
So coming around to the conclusion, we've learned several things from our analysis. GDP has a significant effect on the happiness of the country. As seen in the heat map, log GDP per capita had the highest correlation and seen in our graphs as well. Freedom does have an impact on the happiness of a country, however, not as strongly correlated as GDP. Corruption does not have an impact on the happiness of a country, as seen in our heat maps and graphs.
Life expectancy is significantly correlated with happiness in each country. With low life expectancy, people are dying more frequently, which can lead to the trauma of losing someone and grieving, so the happiness goes down. This can be observed in the happiness and life expectancy plot. Some factors that can influence life expectancy are healthcare, disease, diet, population, and more.
So generally, continents with more developed countries would have significantly higher happiness scores, such as North America, Europe, and Oceania, because countries in those continents have higher GDP, social support, and more freedom of life choices. The other important factor is population. The 2 most populated countries in the world, which is China and India, both located in Asia and have relatively low happiness scores because a massive population means heavy load on social welfare and quality of life. Also creates a fiercely competitive social environment. As an opposite example, the happiest country in the world, Finland, only has 5 million population and located in Europe.
So we can see from 1-year population, it does not really have an effect on the happiness level. But as the population changes over time, the happiness score does change dramatically along with that. So yes, according to this data, we can say that the factors we analyzed above can affect the happiness. So next steps for further analysis, we can include more index if available for more information. And some countries were not present in the data set, like many from Africa and North Korea. We can add some direct analysis scope, like crime levels, agriculture, etc. And yeah, Thank you for listening.